My name is Patrick McMurray, and in this YouTube video I would like to talk about what I think are the three most important things that students need to get right when they are preparing for a set of exams. The first thing I think is really important is that when you've got an exam coming up, you devote enough time to learning the material that you're going to be examined on in the exam. Now, this may sound like an extremely obvious piece of advice, but a lot of students get caught out because they think that they know it, but they don't really know it, and they find this out in the exam, which is of course a bit of a problem. There's no point in having the prettiest notes in the world if you can't actually remember them, if you can't actually wheel them out in the exam. So what's the solution here? The solution is obviously to devote more time to learning, to devote time explicitly to learning, just learning, not making notes, just getting the stuff into your head. And how do you do this? Well, the thing that you don't do is you don't just sit reading through your notes. It's not really a very good way of getting them into your head. I think that it's really important when learning material to adopt a very active approach. In other words, you're engaging actively with the material. And a few ways of doing this include summaries. Summaries are good because they force you to work out what's important, what you need to actually put into your more refined notes. Another way of doing it is to convert the material into a visual form. So you could convert it into a diagram, into a mind map, or into a spidergram. Making these as colourful as possible because your memory loves colours, it loves little pictures. It's a great way of remembering things, to make them as eye-catching and as visually appealing as possible. And making these diagrams and so forth actually is really good because it requires you to actively process the material. It requires you to select what's important, and then you have to put it into different formats. So it's getting your brain to think in all sorts of different ways, which means that it goes in. And another way of doing it, another way of learning material is to go really interactive and explain it to people. It's a really great way of learning something is to explain it to someone who doesn't know about it. Your grandmother or your sister or your kid brother or something. If they don't know about this subject, it forces you to put it in really simple terms, and they might ask really simple questions that make you think about it more fundamentally and think about it in a different way. But what I'd say is that learning is really important, but it's not enough. You have to, as well as learning the stuff, test that you know it. So for example, with summaries, you can spend time writing out the summaries and seeing if you can write them out for yourself, because obviously if you can't write them out for yourself, you're not going to be able to write them out in an exam. It can be embarrassing. It can be very difficult to write out stuff, but it's far better that you find out at your own desk rather than in the examination hall. The final stage in the process after learning and testing is practicing. Get past papers and practice examination questions without your notes in front of you, obviously. And this is particularly important in science subjects. All of my friends who studied science were massive on practice papers, practice questions. But even in art subjects, practice applying what you know to the questions that examiners ask. Exams aren't just about what you know, they're about whether you can apply what you know to the question that the examiner has actually asked. And you can practice doing this. You don't have to write the essays out in full. You can just do bullet points, or even just sit and think about how you would answer different questions.